my good friend. I miss him dearly. Ahead of the NBA deadline tomorrow, Frank Isola. Frank, how are you?
Sally boy, what's up? How are you, man? Good to see
I'm
you.
not. Yeah, well, yeah. Nice to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time. Sirius XM, ESPN, Yes Network. I'm glad to catch you on an off night here. I mean, you're as busy as there is in the media business.
Well, the radio show is 5 days a week, so that's in the morning, so that keeps me going. The Nets, that's about 60 games. I think I'm already at game. It might be like 35 already, so I'm almost through that. And then, of course, with ESPN, it's when Tony Kornheiser wants to go play golf in Florida, they call me up, and I go down to DC, and I'm on that show, which is a lot of fun.
Of all those things, and obviously you and I used to work together for years at SNY. I always was a fan of yours before that because I loved your coverage of the Knicks growing up, reading in the Daily News, wherever else. You were at the Post before the Daily News, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
just remember you, but really in the heyday in the '90s with Riley, with Van Gundy, you were the face of the beat writers around the Knicks. So I grew up loving you, and then getting to work with you at SNY and becoming friends with you was great. But I know you more for this right here, Just Ballin', the book that you wrote with. You remember this? I mean, come on,
My,
this is one of
yeah,
the first books I ever read.
I love I love how you said my heyday in the 90s. I think that's probably pretty accurate. That was my heyday. I actually have the poster. Hang on. I got the
I
poster.
meant heyday
Look,
as a
come
Knicks
on.
beat writer, or for the Knicks. I mean, oh, there
Look.
you go. Look at that, Just Bowling. It was a tremendous book with you and Mike Wise. I loved it. Literally one of the first two books I've ever read in my life, and I couldn't put it down. So I
Yeah.
think you signed this for
Thank you.
me maybe at one point. Did you sign this for me? I think. Yeah. Look at
I
that.
will.
Look. You had.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So busy day around the NBA. Before we get into the Knicks and Giannis with nothing happening there, I have a question about the Cleveland trade. That doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to me. Why would they trade a young stud in Garland for Harden, who seems to be over the hill? Do you make sense? Help me make sense of that Cleveland trade and how it impacts the East.
Well, I think right now Harden is better than Darius Garland, and I think a lot of these teams, Coach told me recently, like windows open and close pretty quickly, and I think his window is open right now. And then you look at the way they played in the playoffs last year. They lose that game one in the second round at home to Indiana. Then the second game, Garland has that toe injury, he's not playing. Evan Mobley didn't play. DeAndre Hunter didn't play. And I always say, I hate calling teams soft, but the Cleveland team was soft, and that was a big issue with them. And Garland is hurt again. He's undersized. It's hard to win a championship with two smaller guards. So Harden, I got a chance to see him 3 weeks ago in Brooklyn. I thought he was outstanding. I mean, he's such a unique offensive player. And believe it or not, and he formed a pretty good relationship with Jeff Van Gundy, who's essentially in charge of the defense with the Clippers. And he was defending. And when you see Harden in person, he's a lot bigger than you think. He's got long arms. He's strong. And what I like about him, and I always admire guys like this in the NBA, he's got a ton of money. He loves playing basketball. So yeah, is he a party guy? Does he like hanging out? Yeah, sure. But he works at his craft and he loves to play. He's always available. Meanwhile, this season, Darius Garland's played 26 games, and this toe injury that he had last year that impacted him in the playoffs is still impacting him now. And I think Cleveland looks at it as, Detroit's, this team's never won a playoff series. The Knicks are obviously going to be tough. Boston could get Jason Tatum back, but, we won 64 games last year. We've fallen off. Let's go out and try to do something to give ourselves a chance. So right now with Harden and Donovan Mitchell, it's a pretty dynamic backcourt. I get it. It may only be for 2 years, maybe 3 years maximum, but I think Cleveland is going for it. And I like Darius Garland, but he's got two big knocks against him. One, undersized. The other one, always injured.
All right, so do you think Cleveland's better than the Knicks now after this trade?
It's going to be close. I think I trust the Knicks probably a little bit more. I think the Knicks probably mentally and physically tougher, but I like two things, the two moves that Cleveland made, because they went out and got Keon Ellis, who's a defensive player, but he gives them a defensive edge. But they also went and got Dennis Schroeder. And Dennis Schroeder, you say what you want about him, and you saw the way he played for Detroit last year in the playoffs. Dennis Schroeder is tough, and he's not afraid of the moment. With the FIBA World Cup a couple of years ago, he led Germany to the gold medal. He was the MVP of the tournament. He's one of these guys that's actually getting a little bit better as he gets older. He'll obviously be coming off the bench for Cleveland, assuming he's not traded again. There's been reports that maybe he could still be on the move. But I like Cleveland more today than I did a couple of days ago. And I think the Eastern Conference now is really interesting, especially if Jason Tatum comes back. I think the road to getting to a finals for the Knicks just got a lot more difficult over the past 48, 72 hours.
Okay, so now the big question. I know the Knicks are in action right now. They're taking on the Nuggets about 5 minutes ago in the second quarter, whatever it may be there. The big story, though, is going to be what they do here at the deadline. Do they break this team up? Do they get Giannis? Do you think that Giannis is going to have any say? Like, I feel like, Frank, from doing the tea leaves, and you could give us some insight to this, that he wants to be a Knick. I'm just trying to connect some of the dots. Do you think, A, Giannis wants to be a Knick? And then, B, do you think that that matters if Milwaukee does, in fact, decide to trade him ahead of the deadline?
Giannis wants a lot of things. He wants the split from Milwaukee to be such that the fans still love him. And the way that it works is some fans will always love him and they'll say, listen, the guy gave us, what is it, 12 years in the league, 13 years. He came here as a skinny kid from Greece. He became a two-time MVP, took the team to the finals. They won a championship. Then there'll be other people who say, look what he did over the last few years, kind of ruined the team with him forcing all these moves and him forcing his way out. I do think there's probably the Milwaukee Bucks will go to Giannis and say, listen, we could trade you to this team, and this team because we know we like what we're getting back. If the Milwaukee Bucks don't like what they're getting back from a team, they're not going to just send him to the Knicks because that's where Giannis wants to go. And right now, Miami actually has a deal that they could make, and the Warriors do because it includes first round picks. Now, what's going to happen if they wait until after the summer, after the season? The Knicks may be in better position to make it happen, but Milwaukee doesn't want their players. They have to get a third team involved to get picks because everything that I've heard about Milwaukee, if they make this trade, it's going to be a total rebuild. So why are you looking to add, for argument's sake, Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges? What is that doing for you?
Would
They want to start over.
Right. So could there be then a third team? Like it's confusing because I feel like the Knicks would be willing to make a move moving on from town. Like to me, it's almost less
100%.
about you. Okay, so it's almost less about Giannis. He just happens to be the star that's available, and more about they have finally identified where most of us identified a year ago. Tibbs wasn't the problem. Cat was the problem. So now they've identified that Karl Anthony Towns is the issue, maybe Bridges as well. And I feel like it's less about Giannis and more about maybe breaking up those two guys from this group.
Yeah, and I think, the one thing I'd say about both of them, I didn't think Bridges had a great season last year, but I thought in the playoffs he had some really good moments, especially against Boston. I thought defensively he was good. He made some big shots in the Detroit series as well. And then, you look at Towns, he was an all NBA player last year, and his numbers in the playoffs were actually really good. The problem with the playoffs last year was that game one against Indiana, and you lose a game like that, and everyone's to blame. In the last, what was it, 30 seconds of the game, OG Anunoby missing a free throw, Towns missing a free throw. Brunson should have kept the ball and gotten fouled, and he should have been going to the free throw line. And then obviously Halliburton hitting that lucky shot. Like it's unfortunate, but I kind of feel like the Knicks have overreacted. I think in some ways the fans have overreacted a little bit. Maybe you're overreacting. I don't think that Karl Anthony Towns was that bad. I get it. He hasn't played well this season. I think, and this is from the outside looking, I know Karl a little bit, but I think he probably got wind that the Knicks were trying to move him to Milwaukee during the offseason. And he was thinking, now hang on a second. I went to a conference finals in Minnesota. You trade for me, I take you guys to the conference final. I wanted to stay in Minnesota. More than happy to come to New York. My dad's here. I'm closer to where I grew up. And now you're going to ship me to Milwaukee. And notice the first time that the Knicks played Milwaukee in Milwaukee, he had a terrible game. It was almost as if he was trying to kill any idea of a trade. Not that he would be directly going to Milwaukee, but I just think he was happy in Minnesota, thrilled to come to New York. Now that he hears he's going to be on the move, I think that's put him in a funk. I'm not necessarily sure he's gotten out of that.
Okay, do you think then, forget what I think or others, do you think that the Knicks can win a championship as currently constructed?
I do because of Mitchell Robinson. So if Mitchell Robinson can stay healthy, I mean, he's an elite offensive rebounder. He changes everything about them defensively. If you go back to last season, he only played 17 games because he was coming back from that injury the year before when he got hurt against Philadelphia in the playoffs. So he only played 17 games. And when he came back for those 17 games, he was on a minutes restriction, couldn't play back to back. So the Knicks' defensive numbers in those 17 games, I think they were top 3 in the league in the 17 games that Mitchell Robinson played. So he makes a huge impact on the game. I think they improved their bench. I know, you talk to people around the league, a lot of people question whether or not they can do it. But all you have to do if you're in the East, and it's not going to be easy getting through the East, but once you get through the East, you only have to beat one of the good teams in the West. It's not like you're Oklahoma City and you're thinking, wow, we might have to play,
Yeah.
Minnesota. We might have to play San Antonio. We might have to play Denver just to get to a finals. That's not the case in the East. And I think the Knicks showed you last year during the playoffs, especially with the way that they played against Boston, that they'll be a tough out.
Which is why I think that even if the Knicks don't make a big move here, worst case scenario is not a bad one. You take your chance and go try to run it in a wide
Yeah.
open Eastern Conference and go try to win a championship. And if you don't, then you could just go make a big trade and they'd be better off for it. You're better positioned for it in the offseason. Sal Licata Show podcast here live with Frank Isola. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. I think the Knicks have gotten worse. When I look at the weaknesses on this team, they're loaded. Arguably the most talented Knicks team, maybe not even arguably. They might be the most talented Knicks team that I've ever seen in my lifetime. But I don't love the head coach. And I would feel better about this team, Frank, if Tibbs were still here. I know you're a Tibbs guy. I've been a Tibbs guy, 90 Knicks, all those different things. But you can't tell me that Mike Brown is better suited to run this team where Tibbs only had one chance to have this version of a team after building up. What do you think about the change?
It's weird too, because I think, a lot of people say, well, he could only get them to so far. Well, number one, they were in the second round and then they advanced to the conference finals. Aren't they taking steps? And look at what the team was when he took over. I mean, Josh Hart had never been in the playoffs before before he came to the Knicks. Jalen Brunson was a terrific player for Dallas, but he was essentially a backup. He became an MVP candidate in New York. Look what happened with Julius Randle. So I think the Knicks got better. The weird thing is, so last year, one team in the Eastern Conference fired their coach after the season. One. And it was the Knicks firing Tom Thibodeau. I still don't get it. And this idea about using the bench, if they thought the bench was so good, why did they go out and change most of the guys on the bench?
Right.
In fact, the guys that he had to play are no longer in the league anymore.
Right.
And
He had no bench, and the guys that they brought in, they don't even use them anyway with
no.
Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson
And
anymore.
and you know what? And if you look too, Mike Brown, Mike Brown is smart. So he said all the right things that everyone wanted to hear. Oh, we're going to play faster pace.
Right.
They're not doing that. Or we're going to have a deep rotation. They're not doing that. They're playing 7, 8, 9 men on most nights, just like what Tom did. And we're not going to chase wins. Go look at the minutes guys play in tight games. It's the same thing. So we'll see what happens come playoff time. I like Mike Brown. He's a good guy, but we know what's going to happen. Once the playoffs start, there's going to be a lot of pressure on that team because they made it to a conference finals, the first one in 25 years. They went to a game 6, lost in a series where Siakam outplayed Towns, Halliburton outplayed Jalen Brunson, but everybody focused on the coach because, he got out coached by Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle is a great coach. They outscored him by an average of 1 point per game, Indiana. Like this idea that,
Right.
Indiana dominated the series. And I think Rick Carlisle is terrific. His last 10 years in Dallas didn't win a playoff series, and I think they were in the lottery 6 times. And the year before, he got swept by the Boston Celtics. And you know what the Pacers didn't do? They didn't overreact and fire their coach. They kept their coach, and the next year they went to a finals.
It reeks of James Dolan, and then he was on the fan, I know, not too long ago, and basically admitted, he just got impatient. They needed to. If you're telling me that you want to move on from Tibbs because you definitively feel like he can't be the guy to get you over the hump, you then better bring in somebody who's done it before and got over. They tried to hire every coach in the league, and they landed on Mike Brown. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and I think the smart thing for them to do, and I think you see this with a lot of organizations. I'll give you an example. So Brad Stevens has a situation with Ime Udoka where there's something going on inside the organization. They have to get rid of him. They bring in Joe Mazzulla. The year before, the previous June, they had gone to a finals. They lose in the finals and everybody's starting up. They can't win with Brown and Tatum. They have to break them up. Brad Stevens doesn't overreact. He hires Joe Mazzulla as a coach. They end up losing to Miami in the conference finals. Joe Mazzulla's, never been to a finals. People calling for Joe Mazzulla's head. He doesn't get rid of Joe Mazzulla. And then look what happens. They go and win a championship. So there's something to be said about kind of ignoring the noise. And I think the mistake that the Knicks made was they lost on a Saturday night. And by Tuesday morning, the coach was gone. Why not give it a week? Let everything settle down a little bit. And then, then talk it out. And if you think you want to make a change, go right ahead. But you just nailed it. They made a change without knowing who they were going to hire. They wanted to hire Jason Kidd, couldn't get permission to speak to him, and then they just basically started cold calling every team in the NBA, asking, "Can we talk to your coach?" That's not how you do a coaching search.
It does. It makes me feel though. Remember, there was some reports. I think it was even Zerbiak who might have said it ahead of the Pistons series. If the Knicks lose this series or don't smoke the Pistons, then maybe there's going to be a coaching change. So it makes me feel like predetermined going into the postseason. They were looking for a reason to get rid of Tom
Well,
Thibodeau.
and you said it. So they beat Detroit, which was that was a fun series. I mean, both
Yeah.
teams were really good. That series was entertaining. And then if you remember going up against Boston, who they hadn't beaten in the regular season, the talk was, well, they better at least be competitive. Well, that's kind of what determines what's competitive? What if they went to a seventh game and got blown out in the second half? Could you then say they weren't even competitive against Boston? So even that was telling me that he was going to be in trouble. And then when they won that series, which is one of the biggest upsets in the NBA, if not the biggest upset in the last 25 years, it was still he's not out of the woods yet. So you're 100% right. I think they were always looking for a reason to get rid of him. And that's fine, but they are kind of doing a lot of the same things that they did under him, running the same offense now, using the same defensive principles, and we'll see how it works out for Mike Brown. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, and that's why I just have a hard time where they had the predetermined stuff, and then after he beat the Celtics, I thought, and I think many in this town were like, "All right, well, Tibbs earned the right to be back at least one more year. Give him a chance." The team wasn't even healthy all year long. They just made a major trade for a superstar in Karl Anthony Towns. What'd you think was going to happen right away? They were going to hit the ground running. So
Well,
you needed at least a year. I wanted to see one more year.
and the whole setup was originally going to be someone was going to get hurt in the playoffs, and then they were going to use he ran the players into the ground. That
Right.
didn't happen, so he had to move the goalpost. It was the Cleveland Cavaliers who all they did was manage everyone's minutes through the playoffs, and their entire team got hurt during the playoffs. Jason Tatum blew out his Achilles. Tyrese Halliburton blew out his Achilles. The Knicks were healthy in the playoffs last year, so that was always going to be the theme. And once they couldn't support that with any real evidence, they now moved on to something else. And if you look at the way they're playing, the numbers for Towns are down. Bridges' numbers are down. Wasn't Jalen Brunson the clutch player of the year last year? I think this year he's ranked. I think about a week ago he was ranked 41st in terms of clutch points. So he went
Well,
from being the clutch player of the year to now he's in the top 50.
think of it this way. We just simplify it. Who's a better coach, Mike Brown or Tom Thibodeau?
I think Mike's been to a finals. He got a chance to coach LeBron, but I think the work that Tom's done taking over losing team, well, not a losing team, a mediocre team in Chicago became they won 64 games there. And then Minnesota, which never made the playoffs, they made the playoffs. And look what he did with the Knicks. So I would give the edge to Tom. I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes, but that's the way I
Well,
feel.
yeah, I don't even think it's close. I would go with Tibbs. What happened with Brown in Sacramento? Can you share some insight on that? Why, as that went the way that it did?
Yeah, that's a weird one there because Vivek Radadive, the owner, there was a story many years ago with Mike Brown. I mean, sorry, Michael Malone, where he allegedly told him, "Why don't we play 5-on-4 on defense, and we'll just have a guy cherry picking at the other end?" Because he had done that with his daughter's fifth grade basketball team. Like, there's a lot of crazy things that they kind of throw out there. But maybe something was going on with him and De'Aaron Fox. I think they made a big mistake trading De'Aaron Fox, but Mike did a pretty decent job there. Where
Right.
remember there was a falling out too with Kobe in LA, and they got rid of Mike in the second year really early in that season. I actually think he did a pretty decent job in Sacramento. But to me, you can never really judge any coach in Sacramento because I just think the ownership situation is always a little hostile or hectic, to say the least.
Well, I mean, some could say the same thing about the Garden. Do you
Yeah.
think Leon Rose made the decision and ultimately was like, you know what? I think our team will be better off, or we need somebody else to try to get this team over the hump.
Um, so years ago, there was talk of Clay Thompson getting traded to Minnesota for Kevin Love. And Bob Myers was the general manager of the team at the time. And he told Joe Lacob, the owner, he says, "If you make that trade, I'm going to resign." Do I think Leon Rose did that in the case of getting rid of Tom Thibodeau? No. So there's your answer.
Right. I mean, it was
He wasn't gonna
basically
he wasn't gonna stand in, it's kinda like the friends and families program over there. Like, they got everywhere, all their friends, family member, everybody's walking around the garden, everybody's getting paid. I think Leon was like, "I ain't messing up a good thing here. Tom's my guy. We just got him a 40 million extension. Sorry, guy. Sorry, dude. We got I'm not fighting on this one."
and because I'm sure he's also fought before that. I mean, there was thought, I forget which year it was exactly, but the Knicks were struggling early on in the year, and then there were the rumors about, oh, maybe this will be the year they get rid of Tibbs, and then they didn't. They stuck with him, were patient for a change, and ended up
Yeah.
winning and having success. So
Yeah,
I'm sure
and
Leon Rose.
that's
Yeah.
it's funny too. I didn't mean to cut
No,
you off, but I always felt like the years that I covered the Knicks, I always felt that the organization and Jim Dolan always struggled with success. Like whenever they had a modicum of success, it was like they did something to kind of derail it. And now you're in your first conference finals, and this is the thing that I couldn't understand. Like, Frank, you hate the Knicks, you hate the Knicks, all this like nonsense. I thought they had a great year last year. They made the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. It was all the Knick fans that were upset. They were more upset over last year than they were like when they kept winning like 25 games,
yeah,
32 games. Then like everything was, oh, God forbid you could criticize the team. They had a really good year. They were a little unlucky. And remember too about Indiana, and nobody will, the Knick fan refuses to give Indiana credit because I don't think they like Halliburton because he reminds them of Reggie Miller.
right.
Indiana played Milwaukee in the first round. They absolutely smoked them. And that's with Giannis. Then in the second round, they beat the team with the best record in the Eastern Conference. They smoked them. Then they beat the Knicks in 6 games. They went to the finals. It was a game 7. They were winning at halftime on the road, and Halliburton had blown out his Achilles, only played 7 minutes of game 7. So can we at least acknowledge that Indiana was pretty good? 100%. You want to be disappointed the way the Knicks season ended. You're disappointed. You thought maybe they could have beat them, but at least give Indiana credit. It's a
Yeah.
much better team than people were giving them credit for last year.
I know, but I hate the Pacers forever. Actually,
There you
Bada
go.
Booms. Yeah, it's true. Bada Booms brought this point up the other day, and I'd be curious to get your take. And I think might be right. Halliburton has actually done more damage to the Knicks at the Garden than Reggie Miller has. 2 years this guy's been killing him. Reggie Miller's been billed as the Knicks villain and owns the Garden. I saw your tweet. We were
Uh,
talking about that. Halliburton's owned the Knicks more than Reggie.
I'm not going to name names, but there's a lot of former Nick coaches that get a little tired of hearing about that. That Reggie, I'm not. You could fill in the blanks on it, and they like Reggie, and I like Reggie too. And I get what NBC's trying to do,
It's
but
every time,
he
Frank.
was
Every
6
game.
and he was 6 and 12 at the guard. He had unbelievable moments. This is what made Reggie Miller stand out. He turned into the villain. He embraced it. He liked the fans abusing him. He liked giving it back to them. So that's why he stands out. I was there for those playoff games. I was there for when Michael Jordan came in. That was the dude that they couldn't beat. It was Michael Jordan. Reggie, I still remember 99 when they didn't have Knicks didn't have Ewing. He was hurt. Larry got hurt in game 6. He had a knee injury, had to leave. And it was Allen Houston against Reggie Miller, and Allen Houston destroyed him. And up to that point, that was probably the third or fourth biggest game that Reggie Miller's ever played in. And Allen Houston took him to the woodshed. So Reggie's an unbelievable player. I like the fact that he embraced the villain role, but this idea that like he owns Madison Square Garden, the stats don't support it. Our boy Michael Jordan, born in Brooklyn, the great. I love
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, so I'm going to be a little bit biased there. I think he's the greatest player of all time. That dude, or as the players used to call him, that black cat. That black cat was the one that the Knicks could not beat. That was a different level player.
And even if Reggie was great in certain moments, we don't need to see it every year. Like everybody, first of all, it's 30 something years ago. Second of all, it's every time he's on the
I,
call for a game in the Garden. It's the same story. We get it. We've seen
I
it. We lived it.
It's funny you bring that up, right? All right. So let's say they're showing highlights from 95,
Yeah.
which is 31 years ago, right? Am I right?
Right.
Am I right about that? So that's 31 years ago. Imagine in 1995, they were showing you highlights from a guy that played the Knicks 31 years old earlier in 1964, and you were 20 years old. You'd be sitting around saying, "How is this relevant? I don't even.
Right.
What do I care about 1964? What does that have to do? Look how slow everyone was moving back then. I don't care about that. But it's interesting that 31 years later, we're still talking about the couple of good games that Reggie had, where the Knicks kind of fell apart, like they did in Game 1 last year against Indiana.
Sticking in the 90s, because it is, and I know we appreciate your time, Frank. Frank Isola joining us here. Check him out, Sirius XM, Yes Network, ESPN, all over the place. We appreciate a few minutes here. But the 90s Knicks are my favorite team. Like, I'm a Knicks fan, but I'm really a 90s Knicks fan. Give me your favorite player to cover during those years where you were with them all the
Yeah,
time during the height of their success.
I admired Ewing a lot. He could be tough to deal with from the standpoint he didn't talk every day, which in some ways I thought was good because anytime he did talk, it was a big deal. And of course, Charles Oakley is my guy. But the guy that I hit it off with the best was Larry Johnson. And Larry was interesting because Larry bridged every guy on the team. Ewing was an older player, and Larry could relate to him being a former number one overall pick himself, having won a national championship in college, having been an all-star, but also with the younger guys, they all looked up to Larry. Like I thought, like he really ran the locker room. He was like the voice of the team. He was the muscle of the team. I respect the way that when he came into the league, he played above the rim. Remember the famous commercials, the grandmama
Yeah.
commercials, where he's dunking dressed as a grandma. And when he had the back stuff, he reinvented his game to play below the rim and, basically beat people with quickness and getting the right angle and body positioning. So he was just a great guy to deal with. And if Larry was always good to me, I'd go in the locker room before every game and I'd sit in front of his line and we would talk about everything. But when the players saw you talking to Larry, it gave you credibility with the other players. They knew like if you were cool with Larry, you were cool, that you would be okay to deal with. Not that mean all the players love me, but I'm just, that gave you a little sense of, you almost got like the blessing from the Pope. I still remember the day when Larry um, his back started bothering him. It looked like it was going to be the end, and he was missing for a game. I think he must have gone somewhere to see a specialist. And before the game, I was sitting at his locker stall, just sitting there, just looking around the locker room. And Alan Houston walked over to me and goes, "You look so sad without your guy here." I said, "You know what? It didn't even dawn on me that I'm like sitting at his locker." I stood up and said, "Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have been doing that." But it was something I really enjoyed covering, and he was great too. I mean, he had great stories having played at UNLV. When he was on Vegas, Suge Knight was on the football team. So he would always
Wow.
tell like really cool stories about hanging out like that. I always thought the UNLV basketball team, like that was like the coolest team because as a team in Vegas, they're winning all these games, they're hanging out in casinos. It's like that's when like college basketball, everyone else was kind of buttoned up like Duke. And here you had like this, UNLV team. And what you didn't realize about them was that they were well coached by Tarkanian. And those guys were dedicated, committed players, whether it's Greg Anthony, who I've gotten to know really well, Stacey Augman, obviously Anderson Hunt, but my guy, Larry Johnson.
All right, give me a favorite series. I mean, dude, you were there for the peak Jordan, Knicks Bulls, Knicks
Yeah.
Pacers, Knicks Heat, all of that stuff. Is there a series or maybe a game in particular that sticks out for you that you covered?
I think the series that stick out the most because I'm one of those. I always try to be realistic, and the Knicks. Jeff Van Gundy wanted to beat Michael Jordan the worst way and Phil Jackson, as did Patrick Ewing and everyone on the team. But I just deep down, I never thought they were going to beat him 4 times in the series. I just always had faith that Michael Jordan was going to win. So it was kind of like to me, if they could somehow knock him off, it would be incredible. But I sat courtside for all. So what would it have been? 24 playoff games, Knicks in Miami when they played for 4 straight years. So all of those, and I think the 99, the 98 and the 99 one stick out because in 97, they should have won. They're up 3-1. I mean, we're all writing stories that it's going to be the Knicks and the Bulls in the conference finals. In fact, when they went on the road for game 5, we all packed thinking we were going to go right to Chicago. That's like even like in the media, we were kind of arrogant about the whole thing. And then everyone knows the rest is history,
Yeah.
guys coming off the bench and suspended. So then the following year, 98, they had a chance to, they lose. I'm sorry, at the game 4, so it was a 5-game series. That's when Larry and Alonzo Mourning got in the fight. And Jeff Van Gundy that's holding onto Alonzo's leg. And as I walk up the court, you could see the look on Pat Riley's face. He's standing right in front of us. He was ashen. And you could tell that he knew that the Mourning was going to be suspended. So the Knicks go down there. No Patrick Ewing because he had been hurt that season. Oakley started at center most of the year. He had a dunk in the game, which we gave him a hard time about afterwards. And then in 99, when Allen Houston hit the shot, because it looked like Jeff Van Gundy was going to get fired if the Knicks lost in the first round. So that's obviously a new team now, Camby and especially Spreewell. And when Allen Houston hit the shot and to be there, and there is something to be said when you go to an arena and you've been in a million games. When you hear the roar of the crowd, like I was in Toronto when Joe Carter hit the home run. It's like that
Wow.
noise, it's something that you never forget. But there's also something about when a guy on the road hits a big shot and there's a lot of silence. There's random Knick fans in other places in the arena making noise. It's almost like this eerie kind of sound. And I still remember that, how amazing that was that Allen Houston, it was like front iron, backboard, and in the shot that he made. I still remember being on the court after the game and Chris Rock was there, like kind of celebrating with the Knicks. So that game, that series sticks out a lot because what was at stake. I think Jeff was going to get fired if they didn't make it out of the series. And Jeff is the son of a coach, and the guy that hit the winning basket was Allen Houston, who was the son of a coach. So it seemed to fit in perfectly.
God, I could talk and listen to 90s Knicks stories all day long. Let's wrap it where we began. Giannis, what do you think happens with him ultimately here ahead of the deadline?
I've been thinking, now listen, something could happen within the next 28 36 hours. I still think they wait till the offseason because remember, they could always offer him 275. So that's a lot of money to turn down. And you know how it works now, Sal, with the players. Their thinking is, let me get the money first. I'll worry about the team later.
Then
Let me
force your
sign
way
the
out
contract.
after.
Because exactly, they could pay him the most money. So I still think that's in play. And I think the fact that they could get more in the offseason, I don't know. You want Jonathan Kuminga, Draymond Green, and 2 future first round picks from Golden State. I don't know. Like Miami could offer a pretty compelling package as well. I think if it happens before Thursday, by Thursday, I think it'll be one of those teams, but I still think it's going to be the offseason.
Frank, you're the man. I miss you. It's great catching up. We got to get to dinner soon. I know
Yep.
we've been talking about that, but we appreciate you taking the time here, talking some hoops with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's amazing. You know so much about sports, obviously baseball, basketball, the Jets and the Giants. You're a hockey guy too. And where do I run into Sal? At a Red Bull game. How about that? Expanding his horizons. We had fun that night.
You're like Mr. Red Bull, and that was fun. We got to do that again. I love going there. It's
how good, by the way, how great is the stadium?
It's tremendous. I love it.
Yeah.
It's 30 minutes to get to, and then once you get in there, it's a great venue. And I was there. You weren't there for this, but we talked about it because I saw you at a different game. I know you go all the time, but I was there for the Messi game this year when he came in and scored
my
2
daughter
goals.
went to that. It was good, right?
I will say, and I'm not a soccer guy, but like I like it for the Red Bulls. It's cool going there. Watching Messi in person and feeling the energy and the hype and then having him deliver was maybe one of the great sports things that I've witnessed in person. It was that good, even for a non-soccer fan.
Yeah. And for people who don't like soccer, I'll agree with you. There's a lot of games that are boring, just like there's a lot of boring games in every sport. Here's the difference, though. Boring soccer game is still only 2 hours. You're in and out of there. It's not like a 4-hour NFL game. You guys watch the Jets and Giants this year. You want it that is the epitome of boring.
That's exactly right. And that's been going on for years. All right, Frank, we appreciate it. Thank you, man.